25 years ago today, I came home from a date to find that nearly my entire family had been unalived while I was gone. This is that story. Trigger warning, this is a post about domestic violence. So if that is something that would bother you, please keep scrolling. July 10th, 1999. It started out like any other day. I was 17 years old. I had slept in. It was probably about 11:30, and I woke up and heard my parents arguing. Days earlier, my mom had announced that she was finally filing for divorce after 23 years in an incredibly abusive marriage. My dad was an alcoholic. He was not physically abusive, but he was incredibly mentally and emotionally abusive to all of us. When he was good, he was really good. But when he was bad, he was absolutely awful. He had told my mom for years and years that if she ever tried to leave him, he would kill her. And he would hide her in a cave in McDowell County, West Virginia, and no one would ever find her. And that morning when I heard them arguing, she ended it by saying, I am going to leave. And if you're going to do that, you're going to just have to do it. And he said to her, I'm not going to kill you. And it was the last thing I ever heard him say. He left the house, stating that he was going to take his belongings to his mother's house. That's where he was going to be staying after he left. And so he left and was gone all day. I stayed, I talked to my mom. I was getting ready to go on a date that night. I had switched my shift at the local grocery store and had worked the prior night in exchange for that night off so that I could go to a neighboring town for a nice dinner and some shopping with my boyfriend. My mom had these rings that had been passed down to her through 3 generations. They were her great-great-grandmother's rings that had come over on the boat from England with her. And I asked every single day if I could wear them, and my mom would never let me. But that day, she told me I could borrow them. I didn't even ask. And I was so excited that I could borrow and wear those rings on my date. And I crossed my heart and promised that I would give them back to her just the minute that I got home. But I never got to keep that promise. While I was gone, my dad came back and had a GUN with him. And he unalived my brother, who was severely physically challenged. Unalived him, and then my mom. And my little sister heard this going on and ran into the kitchen where it was happening. And he also attacked her. She got away and went and hid until she heard him going upstairs. Once she heard him going upstairs, she ran out, stopped to check to make sure that there was nothing she could do for either my brother or my mom. And then she ran out of the house and to a next door neighbor's to call 911. This was in 1999. It was before cell phones. So I was gone. I was on my date. I came home and the road was blocked off. And I couldn't get home to make curfew. So we went around to try a different route, and the road was blocked off there too. Couldn't get home. So we went down to the gas station down the road, and I went in and I asked the gentleman if I could use the phone to call home to let my mom know that the road was blocked off and I couldn't make curfew. And the phone just rang and rang and rang. And I hung up and I tried again, and it rang and rang. No answer. And I told my boyfriend, I said, that's really weird. No one's answering. And all of a sudden, this look of realization just crossed the gas station guy's face. And he said, honey, where do you live? And I said, down the road here in that little green house. And he said, baby, get to the roadblock and tell the police officers who you are. And right then I knew. So I went to the roadblock, And I got out and I told him who I was. And they had me get back in my boyfriend's truck, and they gave us a police escort to the hospital. And when I got to the hospital, I went in to this little room where another officer came in to let me know that my dad had unalived my mom and my brother, and that my sister was on her way into surgery to save her life. And I remember looking at the cop and I said, "And what about him?" And he said, "He's gone too." It has been 25 years since I've heard my mom's voice. 25 years since my dad took my entire world away. And my entire life has been split into two, the before and the after. And not just big things, little things. You know, I was watching Friends with my husband one night, and he was like, what year was this? This episode? And so in my head I was like, okay, well, I watched it with my mom, so it was before 1999. And everything has been that way. She's never seen me in this life. She never saw me finish school. She never saw me get married or have kids or get published for the first time. She's never seen anything because he took her from me. And I've tried so hard to forgive him, and I still just can't. My sister is finally putting a marker on his grave and asked if I wanted to have any say in it. And I told her I've never been to his grave. I didn't go to his funeral. I know where he's buried. He's in our family cemetery in West Virginia, but I've never been there. And I don't think I'll ever go. My mom and my brother were cremated. Her brother and his wife handled all of the arrangements. I was still underage, and they were horrible, horrible people and took everything. I mean, it was already a sensationalized story, even though this was before the days of the 24-hour news cycle. You know, it wasn't blasted on CNN and Fox News and all these things because it didn't exist yet. No GoFundMes were set up to make sure we were okay. You know, and none of these things happened. We were just suddenly on our own. No one wanted me because I wasn't going to come with any money. You know, I was about to turn 18 and I wouldn't be receiving Social Security. So I was on my own at 17 years old, and they let it happen. And further, they took my mom and brother's ashes. I have no idea where they ended up. I don't have a graveside that I can go to on the anniversary each year, or on Mother's Day, or her birthday, or any of the things that you would normally go and do. But the one thing that does make me feel better is that she always told me not to buy her flowers after she died, to give them to her while she was living and she could enjoy them. And the day that it happened, I had gone and bought her a dozen roses at the grocery store, and they were still sitting on the table when they came and found her. So at least I got to give her her flowers while she was living. There were so many times that someone could have done something and could have helped, and they didn't. And there were so many times when she could have packed us up and left, and she just wasn't strong enough. And the one time that she was, that was the result. And for some reason, my sister and I were left here to figure it all out. You would think that 25 years would be long enough to grieve it and move on and get over it. But apparently it's not. And I don't know how long it's going to take, but apparently it's going to be at least one more year.